Welcome to the first episode of the fourth series of the Women in CX podcast, a series dedicated to real talk conversations between women in customer experience. Listen in as we share our career stories, relive the moments that shaped us, and voice our opinions as loudly as we like about all manner of CX subjects. I'll be your host, Clare Muscutt, and in today's episode, I'll be talking to one of our members, a seriously wonderful woman in tech. Let me introduce you to today's inspiring guest. Hailing from Brooklyn, New York, she started out in tech marketing before boldly stepping into the male-dominated space of solutions architecture, working in a number of senior roles for tech companies, including Epsilon and CrowdTwist, before joining SaaS company Airship, where she now serves as strategic services lead. She holds a certificate in design thinking from eCornell, a certificate in customer experience innovation from Northwestern, and is passionate about CX research and making technology more human-centered by design. Please welcome to the show, CX sister, Jennie Lewis. Hi, Jennie.
Hey, Claire, good to talk to you.
Welcome to the Inspiring Women in CX podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you? I'm chugging along here. I'm very, very pregnant. So trying to power through.
Couldn't get any more pregnant, right? 6 weeks to go.
Well, apparently I can. Apparently there's 6 more weeks for it to just keep keep going.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, I'm going to come and ask you some more questions about that shortly, but I just wanted to say welcome to everybody listening along at home as well. It's great to be back after our hiatus. We've been super busy building a community for women in customer experience, the world's first in the background, of which Jennie is one of our wonderful members. So welcome, Jennie and baby on board.
Yes.
So let's get us started then. So I always ask our guests the same question to begin. It's just a little one to warm us up, make us feel nice and comfortable, an easy one to answer. That's just to tell us a little bit about how you found your way to where you are today.
So I started working in technology about 14-ish years ago and started out in a really hands-on tech role, but I was always working directly with customers. Started out with a huge automotive client right out of the gate and found my way through that to do more and more custom technology solutions. And what I realized is that the thing that I loved most was helping customers solve problems, and sort of spun this career through of it's solving more and more complex technical problems, like doing solution architecture and retail point of sale integrations to a loyalty program, and really complex, juicy problems, and realized that there was sort of a niche of being able to understand the technology, but also understanding the customer point of view. Like, what are we doing for the end customer of the brand? So I've always kind of been in the like B2C space, I guess, because I work with the brands and then, try to help their customers out. So I grew through that, and then have a great manager now who really challenged me last year to take on a new role leading a strategy team, which has been amazing. Part of it I'd done before, part of it I hadn't. So it's been this really nice balance of getting to do something I know and also some stuff that's brand new.
Oh, awesome. And you do all this from your awesome apartment in New York, right?
Yes, from my very Brooklyn room, the combo office, cat suite, and music studio,
And when maybe next time when we speak, there'll be baby toys around there as well.
Yeah, exactly, probably so.
Yes. To squeeze it in. So that's super interesting. For a number of reasons, and just kind of playing back what I heard there. So being a woman in technology is also a bit of a challenge, right? Because the majority of the workforce, and particularly the senior roles, are guys. I know you just mentioned you've got an awesome manager that's challenging you to push yourself at the moment. But what's your experience been of being a woman in the tech space, especially on the sounds like quite a technical side of it with solution architecture?
Yeah, most of my prior roles have been in that super tech space, and I mean, it's not easy. But I mean, there were for years I'd go into meetings where I was the only woman in the room, like at all. Just it would be a bunch of engineers and me. I think the two biggest things I run into, folks taking credit for my work, having people just straight up take credit for it. That, and then really getting dismissed during some of those meetings, and working through both of those. It took me, I approached it differently over the years. And, you know, at first with the taking credit for work, the first time I was so shocked that it had happened, because I was like, well, why, how could this have, like, why would somebody do that? Right. It just blew my mind that somebody would even think to do something like that. The second time I got really angry because I was like, wait a second, this is not going to continue to happen. And so I started getting really loud about what I was doing and promoting what I was doing outside of, you know, my pod of folks that I was working in, to make it clear. And it wasn't just my work, you know, it was also my team's work too. So I was like, hey, this is all the stuff that we are doing as a group, and starting promoting that more loudly to make sure that it was obvious outside of our internal team what was going on. The meetings and getting dismissed in meetings, frankly, that never ended. When I was in the tech meetings, what I found over the years was I made really great partnerships with especially the account management team, guys in the account management team who were advocates and absolutely recognized what was going on. And we really partnered together to help redirect things, right? So I had them to help kind of shift things back around and refocus conversations. And, you know, in some cases, one of the guys and I had a little joke where, like, I would say something, and then we had a customer who would just like, oh no, that can't possibly work. And then my account management friend would repeat the exact same thing I said. Oh. And it's mind blowing, but I had to kind of get over the personal, I know I need to do this myself. Right. Like, cause at first I was just fighting it. Like, I have to do this myself. I have to be the one. And then at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's not really what this is about, right? We want to get them to change. We want them to get them to do whatever it is, if it's an integration or a data change or whatever. And if that's the path that I have to take to get there, then, you know, I sort of kind of, I guess I just sort of like threw away the ego side of it, that it had to come from me, and then used my other resources to work around it.
So I'm like, my attitude's coming out now. I'm like, hey, this is not okay, girlfriend.
It's not. But you know, it's crazy because I was on the vendor side, right? Yeah. So I wasn't on the brand side. So that makes it complicated as well, because there's only so much you can push when you're in that position.
Yeah, but I guess like kind of the early days of somebody taking credit for your work and having to find the courage to kind of speak up and shout about what you and your team are delivering to ensure that that's recognized, then kind of end up in the same situation again, where somebody is in a more positive way taking credit for your work, because he's saying the exact same thing you did, but because he's a guy and the male client, I assume, trusts the guy's point of view.
Exactly.
Like, that's the kind of the same thing happening twice, but you came to peace with the second version because you know that guy was like genuinely trying to help you and be an ally. But it's not fair, is it, that women have to modify so much in order to survive in these male-dominated environments such as technology? Because if you'd have been a guy in that situation, like would you have needed an ally to say the same thing as you to get the same
definitely not, right? It would have just been accepted. It just would, what I said would have been accepted, right? And yeah, I mean, it is very similar. I think the big difference is, at the end of the day, my job was to help whoever the end client was improve whatever we were working on, right? And when I changed my I just changed my focus in that scenario. It's like, what do we need to do to help this client move forward, right? And that, if that was the only thing that was going to work, then I just kind of had to accept it.
And I get you, but like it's only women, isn't it, that would be like, I had to sacrifice my ego. Not that it was ego, you just had the right to be heard and listened to, that we'd internalize it that way. So you must really feel the difference then of like the leadership that you're experiencing now. You said, you know.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's very very different environment now. And I mean, part of that is I'm in a less technical role, so my interactions are not like just all room full of tech folks. So I think that's a big change, but it's also I think a leadership change. And it's still something that I encounter, but it's not as, I think in my new position that's more strat, it's just not as frequent. But I agree, it's messed up that we have to do that. It's not it's not right. But I think, at the end of the day, I'm just very thankful that I had so many great allies to help get through it, right? Because those guys were good partners.
And I'm intrigued as well. Because when I have had conversations in kind of particularly product-led spaces, pure play digital, particularly in the SaaS space, the mindset around customer and technology seems to be quite a challenge for especially the technical arm of the development side of technology, to really get their head around where customer can actually become quite an afterthought, and experience can become quite an afterthought when everybody's in the throes of like just trying to deliver with agility and get the features shipped. So I'm kind of curious to hear, a little bit more about when you said, you've always come from this space of wanting to help people solve problems, being the advocate of the customer. Like, how do you kind of help the people more on the vendor and the tech side to appreciate this dynamic and get more value from what they do through the customer lens?
It's definitely not the way most SaaS companies are designed, right? Because it's very segmented out. Like, this is the product, and this is the product that we're releasing, and here it is. So I think that
it's kind of, even with research, it's like validate, isn't it? Validate what we already think rather than research about the customer.
Here's this thing we want to build. Do we think it's gonna work for the customer? And then you find a couple yeses, and here we go. Which in a lot of cases that's great stuff, right? But it starts with the answer instead of with the question. And my case study that's coming up, that's actually one of my first points in the case study is, having that fresh eyes perspective. My number one favorite design thinking term, fresh eyes is probably the most important and the most challenging thing to bring to a conversation when you're doing that kind of research or trying to figure out what to build. Or because I've been so solution oriented and dealing with all the technology, trying to separate that out and coming up with an answer in the first conversation, it was a painful transition, but I'm so glad I did it, because I think it helps you open up more about what you can actually find, because you're not focused on a certain point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's a lot of kind of like solution bias, isn't there, out there, with just trying to validate a product idea. So I see it a lot in startups as well, actually, where the founder is so wedded to their idea of what they think people or the world needs, and they bluster on for years not finding product market fit because they never actually listened in the first place. And just so listeners, if you heard Jennie mention that she's going to be presenting a case study. She's actually presenting our first member-led case study in the community on applied customer understanding in the B2B context. So Jennie, why don't you tell the listeners at home a little bit more about this and what you're going to be talking about in your case study?
Yeah, so I'm so excited about this. I was working with a customer last year who had observed some changes in what they were seeing from sales results. So some shifts in the market that my other favorite design thinking term, disagio. It's like things that are like there's something off here, right? There's like,
say it again.
What's
the term?
Disagio. It's an Italian
Disagio.
word. I had this amazing design thinking professor from Cornell who that was the term that she used in class. But in essence, it's like something that makes you think like, oh, like something is not right. Like like I have a question, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something is off. Like there's you like sense something is off about the situation. Yeah. And so they brought me in to help kind of understand, well, what changes have happened and where should we start to focus? Like what's working, what's not? Is our way that we're targeting folks today from a go-to-market perspective, is that what we should do going forward, or do we need to make some modifications? And so it was this massive research project going through details on their existing customer base, on their potential market, looking at the total addressable market, and getting an understanding of well, where should they focus to have the most potential benefit for the company.
Fascinating. So like design thinking and customer understanding. Let's talk a little bit more about that and the relationship there. So I'm a customer experience designer, but very much coming from a service design background. Haven't personally studied design thinking to the extent of having worked with a Cornell professor to do it. But in terms of like, you know, that where these ideas originate in design thinking in comparison to product-led design is like basically night and day, right? So that disagio, totally, is the word. You know, having a hunch, having a feeling, like you know, kind of there's curiosity there that we want to explore this further. But the next step being to go and do discovery and to listen and to learn and to understand and unpick in order to, you know, the next part of your double diamond, refine like what is the actual problem we're trying to solve is the missing step, right? Because a lot of or companies companies, when they're trying to develop a product, it's about, we have this product now, how do we get it to market, and how do we market this thing that we already built that we already know? Because the fascination around like the ability for this thing to make a difference to cost saving or to remove humans, therefore make it cheaper to do something, like the commercial benefits that have been established for a feature or a piece of technology. But what we end up seeing then is all of these like ideas and even entire digital platforms. Let's say like an example of companies like rushing their way through digital transformation, where they purchase a load of off-the-shelf solutions targeted at removing human contact that then nobody uses because actually,
or they don't work together, or they're like they're so separated out that they're not actually integrated, and then it makes it worse than it was before. So
what's the answer in this space then? Like, how can we get better at applying design thinking to technology and products led decisions?
I feel like it's something you can use anywhere, right? So first off, the coolest thing about the courses that I took is that the professor is like a civil engineer, right? She's not a SaaS product person, right? So it really is taking the technique and the methodology to then apply it to whatever your question is, right? Whatever the thing is that you want to investigate, which I think is what is so cool about it, is that you can, like, it doesn't really matter what the question is or where you're trying to go, you can still take the same methodology through. And even if it's only, you know, I don't often get to do the full like end to end, like build a prototype and all like all the, you know, all of those fun things. But the investigative methodology I do get to use really frequently. So I think it's kind of trying to find where you can put those pieces of it into whatever context you have with the customer that you're working with. You know, my job is basically I run like an in-house agency at a SaaS company. So you know, we've got very different types of projects that we work on, right? Some are, you've got small, medium, large, right? Sometimes we have really long-term retainers or engagements with a customer. And in those cases, I get to really dive more deeply into getting an understanding from them and really like squeeze more juice out of it before we get to any answers. But when we're doing the small, more tactical based sessions, there's not a lot of space for it, unfortunately, just from an operations perspective. But I think it's applying small pieces of the process wherever you can would be the first place I'd start. Because if you tried to do like an org redesign on that, it's very
it's
hard
never going to work.
I think what I found is it's really hard to convince people to not bring the assumption in. Yeah. And that by releasing the assumptions, by releasing the work that had been done prior, some folks take offense to that because they had worked hard on whatever got created before. And it's not that, having like removing those assumptions is saying like, oh no, that was bad work. Nobody's saying it's bad work. We're just saying we're looking at it from a new context. But that mindset I found is very like, some people are all in on it, and then some people get very, very prickly about it.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. Awesome. Well, it's been super fun chatting with you today. I really respect and admire the fact that you kind of came up against those barriers and challenges, but you didn't let it change you. I'm still super fascinated to understand that dynamic about essentially two similar situations, but how much you must have grown during that time to be able to handle it with such grace when being faced with that challenge. And yeah, just like hearing that there's women like you pioneering the strategy from the vendor side to support clients with more customer-centered thinking, and really heartened that actually there's a growing demand for that kind of service from vendors. So that signals to me there's a shift in the wider world where vendors are taking more responsibility of trying to help their clients do the right thing and develop the right product, services, solutions / integrations / ways of making these things work better for the end users than previously, the approach being more about how do we sell this thing and get it in. Which has been the nemesis for many a customer experience in the past. So just to finish off then, just to round off our little half hour together, what would you give as your piece of advice to your fellow women in CX listening along at home?
Meet and listen to everyone you possibly can to understand what they do within their role, what their frustrations are, what their goals are, any type of listening exercise that you can do to understand what people in very different roles than you are doing. It'll give you more perspective to bring to any conversation, right? Because when we're talking about customer experience, we have to think about all the different types of customers, right? And you're only one person, so you have to start opening yourself up and getting a stronger understanding of things that are different. And I found, just especially being on the vendor side all these years, that the more folks that I can get to know and talk to, I have some amazing friends who worked in technical support or, worked in engineering. That's part of how I learned to code. It was, talking with these folks, but
hang on a minute, you learned to
just
code.
getting,
I didn't know that.
My very first role in tech, it was back when there was no WYSIWYG for email, and I was writing Perl code to personalize automotive emails to show this wheel type, if you pick this, or this different vehicle type. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh God,
so that's my.
I already knew you were cool, but you're even cooler now. I know that story as well. But yeah, that's a great piece of advice, and 100%, agree that as customer experience professionals and leaders, We spend a lot of time thinking about the customer and trying to understand them. But actually, when it comes to delivering the work that we need to do to drive change through leadership, we have to treat our stakeholders like customers too, and really listen to and understand them in order for us to be able
100%.
to influence that agenda. So I think that's a wonderful little takeout. So that's it from us. Best of luck with the impending 6-week challenge that's coming up.
Thank you. I'll keep you posted.
And can't wait to see you in the community and see your case study next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennie. Bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Women in CX podcast with me, Clare Muscutt. If you enjoyed the show, please drop us a like, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever platform you're listening or watching on. And if you want to know more about joining the world's first online community for women in customer experience, please check out womenincx.community and follow the Women in CX page on LinkedIn. Join us again next time, where I'll be talking to another amazing community member, this time from Saudi Arabia, about getting closer to customers on any budget. See you all soon.